Algebra 2, Chapter 5, Section 6. This is the 7th and last video of this series. We need to talk about conjugates. So we've been working with what happens when you have two numbers that are multiplied by each other. The first ones are the same, second ones are the same, and it's a plus and minus. Well, the middle terms drop out. And this becomes very useful when we're dealing with fractions. So we need to know, these are actually called conjugates of each other because those middle terms drop out. So let's do the conjugates of a square root of a, square root of b. So we're just going to multiply these two things here together and see how helpful this is. So again, I'm going to FOIL. So I've got my first square root of a times the square root of a is just a. And then I've got my outers. So square root of a times the square root of b would be minus the square root of ab. And then I've got my inners. A very good eye. So that's square root of b times the square root of a, so that one is plus the square root of ab. And then we have our last, so square root of b times the square root of b is going to be minus b because we've got a positive here and a negative over there. Middle terms drop out and you get a minus b. Very useful, no square roots involved whatsoever, so life is good. Let me do one with numbers in it. So again, foiling it. So 5 times 5 is 25. My outers, 5 times square root of x is minus 5 square roots of x because of this minus sign right there. And then we've got my inners, so that's going to be square root of x times 5, so that's positive 5 square roots of x. Positive times positive is positive. And the last square root of x times square root of x is just x, and it's a positive and a negative, so it's a negative. Middle terms, they're exactly like, except one's positive and one's negative. So middle terms drop out, and you get 25 minus x. No radicals whatsoever. So that is finding your conjugates and what we're doing with our conjugates. So let's practice a few of these real quick. X times x, that would be x squared. Middle terms drop out, so this would be minus 9. Okay, 5 times 5 is 25. Positive and negative is negative, and that would be y squared. Hopefully these get very, very quick for you because we're going to use this a lot for the rest of the book. X times x is x squared. Middle terms drop out. Positive and negative is negative, and y times y is y squared. Okay, so how are we using this? We actually have to build the conjugate so we can rationalize our denominator. What does it mean by rationalize our denominator? Well, we can't have a radical in the denominator. So we have to rationalize it, make it all rational numbers. And so we use our conjugate for this. So we are going to multiply by 4 plus the square root of 3 on the bottom. And if you do that on the bottom, then we have to do that on the top. And you can see how everything else we've done in this section leads to this final finale of we're using it all. So this is going to have to be foiling it. So we're going to do our firsts. So that's 2 times 4 is 8. And then we've got to do our outers. So 2 times square root of 3 is plus 2 square roots of 3. Then we need to do our inners. So square root of 3 times 4 is plus 4 square roots of 3. And then we need to do our lasts. So square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. And then on the bottom, well, we know that this is same numbers, one positive, one negative, so we're going to square the first one, so that's 16. Subtract 3 times 3, or square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just 3. Then you're ready to combine like terms. So 8 plus 3 is 11. Square root, or 2 square roots of 3 plus 4 square roots of 3 is 4 plus 2 is 6 square roots of 3. And 16 minus 3 is 13. And 13 is not divisible into these two things, so we are done. It is reduced. That's your final answer. We need to do a couple of these because these are confusing. So here's another one. It's got a radical in the denominator, so you have to multiply by your conjugate. So we need to write our conjugate. So that is a 5 minus the square root of 3. And if you multiply the bottom, you have to multiply the top. by the exact same thing, right? Because otherwise you're multiplying by something other than 1. This is actually 1, right? That's why it works. So we need to FOIL. So FOIL first. That's 1 times 5 is 5. Then we need our outers. That's 1 times the square root of 3, so that's minus the square root of 3. Then we need our inners. Square root of 3 times 5, so that's minus 5 square roots of 3. And then we'll do our lasts. So square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is a 3, and 2 negatives make a positive, so that's plus 3. And we can do the bottom. And we don't need to go ahead and FOIL. We can just follow our pattern. So that's going to be 5 times 5 is 25. Middle terms drop out. And it's going to be square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. Then you can combine all your like terms. So you have a 5 plus 3 is 8. Minus square root of 3 minus 5 more square roots of 3 is minus 6 square roots of 3. And then 25 minus 3 is 22. Are you done? Well, this is divisible by 2, this is divisible by 2, and this is divisible by 2. So we are not done. We need to reduce. So this is equal to 2, using my distributive property, 4 minus 3 square roots of 3. Right, if I were to distribute this 2 back in, I would end up with 8 minus 6 square roots of 3. And on the bottom, this is equal to 2 times 11. So final answer, when I reduce my 2 out of all of that, would be 4 minus 3 square roots of 3 over 11. Okay, that's final answer. Again, I want to do a few of these because these are so complicated. So again, we've got to conjugate the denominator. So that means I need, or find the conjugate to rationalize the denominator. So it's square root of 5 plus 2. Whatever you multiply by the bottom, you have to multiply the top by the exact same thing. Okay? Otherwise, you're multiplying by something other than 1, but that is 1 right there. It's a very weird-looking 1, but it's 1. We're just multiplying by 1. So we're going to distribute the top. I only have one term, so I don't have to FOIL. I can just distribute. So square root of 3 times 5, the square root of 5 would be the square root of 15. And square root of 3 times 2 is plus 2 square roots of 3. That part's done. The bottom, square root of 5 times square root of 5 is just 5. Minus 2 times 2 is 4. And then I'm ready to reduce what I can. So that's the square root of 15 plus 2 square roots of 3. 5 minus 4 is 1. And so the answer is just our numerator, square root of 15 plus 2 square roots of 3. Final answer. Can't reduce it any further. Okay, one more problem, if you need it. This one, we've got to find the conjugate of the denominator. So that's going to be 4 minus the square root of 3. Maybe in this one you wanted to practice ahead of time, then pause the video and see if you did each step right. That would be a good idea. The top is going to be 4 minus the square root of 3. Remember, it's got to be minus and minus because we're multiplying by 1, so it's got to be the identical top and bottom. And then we're ready to FOIL. So first, 5 times 4 is 20. That's going to be a 20 over here. And then I got my outers. 5 times square root of 3. It's a positive times a negative, so that's a negative 5 square roots of 3. Inners. So that's going to be square root of 3 times 4, and they're both positive, so it's plus 4 square roots of 3. And then my last, square root of 3 times square root of 3, and it's a positive and a negative, so it's minus 3. On the bottom, we are going to use our trick, so we're going to square the first, so 4 times 4 is 16, or 4 squared is 16, minus square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just a 3. And then you can combine like terms, so 20 minus 3 is 17. And then you've got minus 5 plus 4, so that's minus 1 square roots of 3, or just minus square root of 3. And 16 minus 3 is 13. So you could write this 17 minus the square root of 3 over 13, and 13 does not divide into either of these, so you are done. Final answer. So hopefully that's clear. If not, you can go back and watch the videos on those 4 problems and try some of your own.